Welcome everyone to our third and final press conference. This press conference and this session is entitled Bringing Religion to Bear on the Climate Emergency. My name is David Miron Wapner with the Interfaith Center for Sustainable Development. We are trying to reveal the connection between religion and ecology and have religion step up and take its appropriate place in the battle that we all face, the existential crisis for humanity. So I'm very pleased today to welcome to this panel several voices who bring spirituality into the fight that we are all in, the fight of our lives. So first I'd like to call on Regina Valdez from the Center for Sustainable Development at Columbia University.
Thank you so much for that introduction. As mentioned, my name is Regina Valdez, and I'm here to speak on the environmental and global warming crisis from a Buddhist perspective. So my faith, Buddhism, especially my tradition, Theravada Buddhism, is rooted directly and integrally to nature. I am particularly interested in the Thai forest tradition, and in this tradition, the monks and the nuns practice their spirituality in the forest. They meditate at the feet of trees. They do walking meditation in the woods, because it is in nature that one can find enlightenment. And as a matter of fact, the Buddha himself attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree in the middle of nature. And when he had finally resisted all the torments, he attained enlightenment. And when he was challenged as to whether or not he attained enlightenment, he touched the earth to bear witness to that enlightenment. And where he touched the earth, a lotus blossomed. So you can see that nature is in every way a part of Buddhism. And I want to mention that there are 5 precepts within the Buddhist faith. And one of these precepts is to refrain from killing living beings. So a lot of Buddhists take this to mean that we should engage in a vegetarian diet, which I do, but also the refraining from killing. That means not killing any living being, even so much as an ant, but certainly not cows for food, certainly not fish. Any living being has its own right to live based on its own merit, the fact that it has come into being. It is not for us to take away. That leads to another precept, not to steal or take what is not freely given. So we see that Buddhism is, or we see that exploitation of the planet is in direct opposition to Buddhism. Direct opposition into the idea of the sanctity of life, including rainforests, rivers, oceans. Direct opposition of stealing, theft of natural resources, especially the theft of natural resources for the point of exploitation of those resources. As Buddhists, we are called to surrender to the law. What is the law? The law of nature. Nature will have her way, and we are to live in harmony with nature, not in opposition to nature. I also want to mention that Buddhism, much like most other religions, uses similes and metaphors of nature for an understanding of spiritual teachings. So without nature, there are no spiritual teachings, and I would like to pass it on to the next speaker. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Regina. I'd like to call upon Paul Beckwith, a climate systems scientist from Ottawa in Canada, to speak about for himself personally, the intersection of spirituality and his work as a scientist.
Thank you. Scientists are the ones who, if they study the system, the climate system, they're very aware of how quickly the environment is degrading. They're aware of the threats that we have from, say, extreme weather events simultaneously occurring around the world, hitting our global food supply. And there's even recent scientific papers this year, I would say, that for the first time are talking about the possibility of humans not being on this planet long term. So we all know that we're mortal. We all know that we're, here for a limited time on this earth as an individual. But it's very hard for us to wrap our minds around the view that, we could all perish at roughly the same time or within a few years if things really get extremely dire, as many scientific reports seem to be saying. So this puts a lot of pressure on the human mind and humans to try to come to grips with this. First of all, we completely dismiss it and say, no, I'm not even going to think about this. It's absurd. And then as more and more extreme weather events and massive storms and problems, droughts, floods, all these other things occur, and I think Al Gore said that, it's almost like walking through the book of Revelation, some of the, extreme weather events and climate catastrophes that we're seeing, and that on top of the COVID pandemic and on top of, the war with the invasion of Ukraine, it leads to very existential questions for scientists, and there is deep faith in many scientists, and of all different faiths and many scientists, and it helps them basically, have faith and keep of a stable mind and stable situation in order to do the important work of. But often many scientists are saying, it's like instead of doing the research, it's really like we're documenting sort of the decline of humanity sort of real time because it's happening so fast. So we need to come to grips with that and obviously reverse that. And I think in a COP in the near future, the main topic will be climate restoration. That's the goal. How do we restore a healthy planet? How do we get the climate back to what we had, say, 100 years ago in terms of greenhouse gas levels, et cetera? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. I'd like to call on my friend and partner in our efforts to forge a Sinai Climate Partnership and develop 10 spiritual principles for climate, a great warrior for peace, James Sternlicht.
Thank you, David. So when we look at the current global climate crisis and what the implications of that will be, it is very clear that humanity, despite our success, despite the last 30 years of relative peace, is at a crossroads and is at great risk. If you look at the world today, we see declining crop yields. We see food supplies threatened. We see rivers running dry, from the Colorado in the Mississippi in the United States to Euphrates in Iraq, to massive flooding in places like Pakistan and in Nigeria. And if we think that we can go on with business as usual, well, we're wrong. These sorts of events alone will drive migration. They will drive scarcity. If you want to talk about inflation, if you don't have water, you can't grow crops. That makes food more expensive. That makes ethanol more expensive. This is pretty basic economics, but we seem to have forgotten that we're tied to the land and tied to the oceans. We have oceans full of plastic. We have health problems resulting from that, and we're not doing anything about it. So from a very on the ground, practical, secular perspective, this is a problem. And we are coming to a time in human history where we will see that we have a great challenge ahead of us. And we who are here at COP right now know that we have to address that challenge. That challenge is also an opportunity where we produce enough food currently for roughly 11 billion people on this planet. With having today just crossed the 8 billion person mark, we still have over 1 billion people who are hungry. This is a distribution problem, not a production problem, but we have to fix this. And there's this notion of salvation, of saving the world or saving ourselves. The kingdom of heaven, at least I like to say, the kingdom of heaven is ours if we choose to build it. We have to make the choice to come together to build a world in which there is much less suffering. We can't get rid of suffering, it's part of life, but we can make it so that people don't suffer unnecessarily. And to do that, we need to address these challenges that are both the product of natural systems and the product of human activities on this planet. If we don't address these things, we are the agents of our own destruction. If we do, we can build the beautiful world that we want. And, this is not some crazy out there New World Order sort of thing. This is just doing what we need to do, acknowledging the consequences of our actions, and taking the learnings that scientists, scholars, philosophers, and all those have put together in order to build that which we need to survive.
Thank you, James. It's my pleasure to call upon my friend and colleague, Rabbi Yonatan Neril, the director of the Interfaith Center for Sustainable Development in Jerusalem.
The Nobel laureate Toni Morrison tells a story of a young boy who comes to an elder woman with a bird in his hands. And he says to the woman, "Can you tell me whether the bird in my hands is alive or dead?" And the woman realizes that the boy is playing a trick on her, because if she says the bird is dead, he will open his hands and release the bird. And if she says the bird is alive, he will close his hands and crush the bird, and either way, she's wrong. So she thinks to herself for a minute, and she says to the young boy, "I don't know whether the bird in your hands is alive or dead. All I know is that the life of the bird is in your hands." That's our situation today. The ecological crisis is a spiritual crisis. Climate is a symptom, just like biodiversity loss is a symptom. It's not just about the birds and the bees, the trees and the toads. It's about how we live as spiritual beings in a physical world. As Genesis chapter 2, verse 15 says, "Vayanichehu began Eden le'ovdah u'leshomrah," and God placed the human being in the Garden of Eden to serve it and to conserve it. The root issues of the crisis are greed, arrogance, short-term thinking, and seeking our pleasure in the physical. That's why consumer society drives the climate crisis. And we can't simultaneously expand consumer society and expand the human population and curb climate change. The root spiritual solutions are long-term thinking, humility, caring for other people and creatures, and finding our source of pleasure in spirituality, family, and community. Those root issues are ones that only religious institutions can deliver on. And so the work ahead of us is not just about decarbonization and switching to renewable energy and electric vehicles, etc. A lot of the work ahead of us is bringing religion on board to address the climate emergency. Most clergy in the world don't speak about climate change. That's why of the 45,000 people here, there's only a small number of clergy. And so it's key that religious institutions get on board because they have huge land holdings, huge media outlets, huge educational systems. And in order for the next generation to inherit a livable, thriving, and spiritually aware planet, We need all people on board, including the 85% of people who affiliate with a religion. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Yonatan. It's my pleasure to introduce Metropolitan Serafim, who is the Vice President of the Pan-African Council of Churches. I think you are in a good position to address the question of how do we really bring religion to bear on the climate crisis. Metropolitan.
Thank you very much. Before Noah received instructions by God for the ark, there was this catastrophe. And if we read carefully in the book of my friend, Echo Bible, in fact, there is a relation between the corruption of the humans and the situation of the land. And then return from your evil ways and deeds. So even the Secretary General in the beginning, he used the term catastrophe, ecological catastrophe, if we carry on living in the way we live. And the executive for UNEP, who support this initiative here, she used the term ecological chaos. We are going towards ecological chaos. So in the Bible, in Torah, in the beginning, they say there was chaos. And when the Ruach of God came, the chaos became cosmos. So let me emphasize some of the points of the voice of the faith communities in this direction. First of all, we have to speak about stronger structures for implementation of the Paris Global Agreement, ecological and social public policies in order to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. So there is a lack of respect of the international law. That's why we have today the Russian invasion in Russia. That's why even although the Prime Minister of Israel, during the last General Assembly, he said, we are ready for negotiations for the two-state solutions between Israel and Palestine. We are waiting to see. Can you imagine if they use all these funds instead of military activities to take action for climate change? They can be the visible example for the whole humanity and for the whole planet. As one of the prophets, Messiah, said, to put aside the knife and to cultivate the land to protect the whole humanity. So we have to get with the Paris Global Agreement what is missing in the Kyoto Protocol. Timing, participation of all the parties, implementation of public policies, and how to get funds. I mentioned military developments. There is the meeting now in Indonesia of the G20. These countries are members of the Security Council of the United Nations, and also they are the countries who spend more money on military developments, and they are the ones who they didn't do anything about the climate change action. And I am about to finish. Countries suffering of poverty need to improve democracy, to reduce corruption, and to have international guarantees for their territorial integrity. And on the page 70 of the same Echo Bible is the question when Cain killed his own brother. What is your brother? And he replied, do you think I am the keeper of my brother? Yes, you are the keeper of your brother, of the suffering people, and of the whole planet as a gift of God for all of us.
Thank you, Metropolitan. It's my pleasure. I'm very happy that Gloria Ushigua Santi is here from Ecuador, from the Sapara Nation, to offer your thoughts on how we bring spirituality to bear on the climate crisis.
Buenos días. Gracias por la invitación. Ayer encontramos al Señor Y mi nombre es Gloria Ushigua, yo soy de Ecuador, Amazonía, pueblo Sapara. Y bueno, la vida de nosotros como indígena, yo vivo en la selva, cuidando naturaleza, toda la Amazonía, cada grupo indígena cuidamos. ¿Y por qué? Porque ahorita está cambiando el mundo y cambio climático ya entró Amazonía y como nosotros vivimos, siembra con nuestra propia, aunque no manejamos economía y nuestra siembra, nuestra cultiva, nuestra medicina, y eso nosotros estamos luchando y contra nuestro estado. Y la vida de nosotros, si nosotros permitimos explotación de petróleo o maderero, y eso es mi lucha como mujeres amazónicas y mi pueblo Sapara.
Hello, this is Gloria Ushigua. Comes from the Amazons of Ecuador. There is where they have faced climate change. And right now is a time where her and her hometown have been struggling with this and protecting her territory through other exploiters that are creating her territories at risk right now. Right now, it's very important for her to continue this fight and protect her territories during this time. She comes from the Sapara Nation. ¿Quieres hablar más de la religión?
Religión. Y bueno, también nosotros como pueblos indígenas, nuestra vida, lo que cuidamos todo y tenemos nuestra propia religión. Bueno, yo conocí ayer a un señor, para mí es una gran corazón lo que él me invitó para saber la historia de pueblos indígenas, porque nosotros valoramos nuestra vida, nuestra comida, cada día cuánto comimos, aunque no comprando, pero y eso valora nuestra medicina, un valor cuánto gastamos, cuánto viene de pesca y cacerío, nuestras frutas, todo eso valoramos. Y toda esta lucha no es solo para nosotros, pueblos indígenas, es para todos, para el mundo. Eso es lo que tenemos que saber, la vida de los indígenas, luchamos cada día, nunca descansamos nosotros. Hablamos con el Estado, sale hablando a nosotros, indios no sirven, indios no tienen territorio, sí tenemos territorio. Por eso nuestra sangre metió en la tierra y convirtió color café. Tenemos la misma color de nuestra piel.
First of all, Gloria was felt very kindly invited by the man that set this up and wants to thank them, but also wants to talk about how in her territories, for her, every single thing that they hunt for, they fish, they're very grateful for, and they hold value to every single thing that they produce and that they consume. And for her, it's about valuing those things and valuing every step of that process. And they do not just, in her territory, her people do not just do this for themselves, but as well for the rest of the world. That this is a way of living that they know is sustainable and they know can help other people as well. And for them, they also believe that their blood is the color of brown, because once they die, their blood goes in with the earth and comes in with the land, and it becomes one. And so for them, blood signifies, brown signifies blood.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the wisdom of the indigenous peoples of the world who have so much to offer. I think we have time for about 30 seconds of comment from perhaps each of you. First, I'll go back and call upon Regina. I know that I was privileged to be in the Deer Park where Buddha preached his first sermon after reaching enlightenment, and the lessons of compassion are so important. So please.
Thank you so much. Just quickly to say it's been so inspiring to hear everyone on this panel. I also want to say that, the Buddhist teachings instructs us that we cannot heal in the same environment that got us sick. We are sick in this environment. I appreciate the discussion of the corruption of humanity, the human mind. And as the Dhammapada states, all things begin with the mind. We need to de-corrupt the mind, stop valuing the profane money. When there's 30 men in the world who have more money than 4 billion people in the bottom half, we are truly corrupted. We must heal, and we can't heal in the same environment. Thank you.
Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, if you're heading in a certain direction, you eventually, reach in our case, a climate catastrophe. Global food shortages, complete loss of Arctic sea ice, collapse of glaciers around the world, especially Greenland and Antarctica, mountain glaciers, rising sea level rises. This is exactly where we're heading. So the only way we can avoid this is if we change course, and then but time is not unlimited. We need to do it quickly before the greenhouse gases coming out of the earth, the methane, etc., dwarf humanity's ability to do anything about it. Thank you.
Regina, could you offer some final words, perhaps 30 seconds? Excuse me, Gloria.
Y bueno, nosotros tenemos que lo que estoy hablando, ¿no? Y pueblos indígenas, otros indígenas son colonizados, todavía no soy colonizado, por eso yo tengo mi valor, mi alimentación. Aunque no compro, y el valor, qué cantidad como al día. Y también yo siempre pido a mi Dios, se llama Piazzao, esa es mi historia. Tengo mi propia historia y todavía no está escrito con la misma palabra Piazzao. Gracias.
For her values always continue to stay because her territories have not yet been colonized, and that's why they've been able to keep this sacred, and that's why they her God is a Piazzao God, and they're the ones that take care of them and provides them food and everything, and sustains them.
Metropolitan?
We need unity among the leadership of every religion in order to have a stronger moral voice. Unfortunately, the churches are not together, the Muslims are not together. I don't know what's going on in the other religions. And as the religious leaders are not together, we fail to influence also the political leaders to be together and to have international unity for implementation of the international law. Thank you.
Thank you to all of you for being with us today and delivering your message, essential message of hope for all of us. Thank you.